Today, I'll share a story so intense it lingers long after the last shot, set against the harsh beauty of the Old West, where dawn breaks cold over canyon walls and danger rides with the wind. This is a place where isolation breeds arrogance, and where one man's land becomes the crossroads of life, death, and redemption. It started with 5 riders who ignored a warning sign. A simple choice that set fate in motion and changed every life involved. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. A retired gunman bought a lonely stretch of land deep in the Arizona territory. When outlaws crossed his fence, none of them ever rode away. In the spring of 1885, Caleb Ward paid cash for 2,000 acres of rugged canyon ground, a purchase large enough to draw curious looks at the Prescott land office. The clerk kept his questions to himself. Men who carried that much money and that kind of stare had earned silence. Caleb was 58, his beard more white than gray, his hands steady despite the stiffness that punished him on cold mornings. He had spent 3 decades as a lawman, a bounty hunter, and sometimes something darker he never named out loud. The ranch was meant to be peace, a last chapter, a place where he would die in a bed instead of the dirt. He built a modest adobe and timber house tucked inside a box canyon with a single, narrow entrance, set so he could spot any rider from a mile away. A wire fence circled the property, not to hold cattle, but to draw a boundary. Every 100 yards along that fence stood a warning sign, burned into wood with a hot iron. Private property. Trespassers will be shot. Survivors will be shot again. Most folks laughed it off as the bitter humor of an old gunfighter who had lived too long with death. The Calder gang laughed too when they rode onto Caleb's land one October morning, searching for a hideout after robbing a Phoenix stagecoach. 5 riders, all young, all armed, all convinced one aging rancher posed no threat. They were mistaken. They crossed the fence at dawn. By sundown, Caleb was digging graves. Before the trail carries us farther, if you're enjoying this story, hit that like button. And if you haven't joined Wild West Radio, subscribe now. Tell me what country you're listening from. I like knowing how far these stories travel. Stay sharp. What comes next will catch you off guard. Caleb had been awake long before sunrise, as always. Years of early morning arrests had burned the habit into him. Men were slow and careless before daylight. He stood on his porch drinking coffee when he noticed dust lifting from the eastern approach. 5 riders moving steadily across his land. His fence had been cut. The loose wire glinted pale against the red earth. Caleb set his cup down and stepped inside. His Winchester was already loaded, just as it had been since the day he arrived. He reached for his gun belt next, the one he had sworn never to wear again. The worn revolver settled against his hip like an old companion returning home. Some reunions weren't welcome, but they were necessary. The riders came on loud and careless, laughing and talking while still 200 yards out. Young men swollen with arrogance and iron. Caleb knew their kind well. He had buried men like them before. The leader wore a black hat trimmed with silver, too fine for an honest hand, which meant it was stolen. The others were wrapped in dust-stained trail clothes. Their horses foamed from hard riding. Caleb stepped off the porch and walked into the open yard, rifle loose but ready. When they closed to 50 yards, he raised his voice. "That's far enough. You're on private land. Turn around and ride out." The leader pulled his horse short as the others drifted apart, instinctively spreading for advantage. Either trained or taught the hard way. The man smiled, teeth yellowed by tobacco. "Easy, old-timer. We ain't here to start trouble. Just need water and a place to rest our horses." "There's a creek 3 miles east," Caleb said evenly. We passed it, the leader replied. Your place looks better. A younger rider spoke up, maybe 20, one hand resting on his pistol as he tried to look dangerous. Nice ranch you got. Would be a shame if something happened to it. Caleb didn't blink. Son, you get one chance to leave. After that, he added, things stop being temporary. The young man laughed. You hear that, Rafe? Old man's threatening us. He looked at Caleb with the careless contempt of youth toward age. 5 of us. 1 of you, grandfather. Maybe you ought to worry about things getting permanent. Rafe Calder lifted a hand. Easy, Mason. No need to be rude. He turned back to Caleb with a smile that never reached his eyes. My friend's young and foolish, but he's not wrong about the odds. We've been riding hard 3 days. We're hungry. Horses need rest. You look like a reasonable man. How about you show some hospitality? Rafe continued. And we'll be gone come morning. Caleb studied them closely. The way they sat their saddles, the wear on their holsters, the nervous tension beneath their confidence. These weren't hands looking for work. They were men running from something. These weren't drifters looking for shelter. They were men fleeing something, most likely the law. The stage robbery outside Phoenix had happened 2 days earlier. 3 men were dead, including the driver. The territorial marshal had wired every town within 100 miles. Caleb knew it without being told. I know who you are, Caleb Ward said quietly. Rafe Calder and your crew. The mention of the name landed hard. That stage you hit, one of the men you killed was 63 years old. Caleb continued. A guard named Walter Finch. 3 months from retirement. The smiles disappeared. Rafe's hand drifted toward his gun. Well now, Rafe said, voice turning cold. That's unfortunate. Can't have folks walking around knowing our names. I'm giving you a choice, Caleb said evenly. Ride out right now, and I forget I ever saw you. Stay, and by nightfall, you'll be in the ground. Your mothers will never know where you died or why. Mason Pike laughed again, but the sound rang hollow. You're out of your mind, old man. You really think you can take all 5 of us? Caleb didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. I've killed more men than you've met in your whole life, son, he said. I stopped counting at 47, buried most of them myself. I came out here to quit killing, but if you force my hand, I won't lose a minute of sleep. One last chance, Caleb finished. Ride. Rafe's face hardened. Kill him. Everything broke loose in the space between heartbeats. Luke Calder went for his gun first. Young, fast, confident. He never cleared leather. Caleb's Winchester cracked once. The heavy .44 round slammed into Luke's chest, throwing him backward out of the saddle. Horses screamed and scattered, leaving Luke crumpled in the dirt. Caleb worked the lever and fired again, without pause. The second rider, a thin man with a scar slashed across his cheek, caught the bullet in the throat. He made a wet, choking sound as he toppled sideways, hands clawing uselessly at the wound. 2 dead in under 3 seconds. The remaining 3 split apart, hauling hard on the reins and kicking for cover. Rafe Calder moved fast. Caleb had to give him that. He dove behind the water trough, pistol out, firing wild shots that snapped dirt at Caleb's boots. The 4th man, heavy-set, black-bearded, made for the barn. Caleb's 3rd shot shattered the man's leg, spinning him around. The 4th ended it. The last rider, the youngest, no more than 19, threw his pistol into the dust and lifted both hands. Don't shoot. Please, I give up. Caleb kept the rifle trained on him. Get off your horse. Slow. Hands where I can see them. The boy dismounted, shaking so badly he nearly collapsed. Please, sir. I didn't want that robbery. Rafe made me. I never killed nobody, I swear. Lie flat, Caleb ordered. Face down, arms spread. The boy obeyed, sobbing into the dirt. From behind the trough, Rafe shouted, voice thick with rage, "You killed my brother, you old bastard." "That was your brother," Caleb replied calmly. "He should have listened. All of you should have," he added. "This didn't have to happen." "I'll gut you slow," Rafe snarled. "Make you scream before you die." Caleb answered with 2 quick shots. The heavy rounds tore through the water trough. Wood exploded. Rafe screamed. Moments later, a pistol hit the ground. Rafe's voice came again, thin, broken. I'm hit bad." Caleb advanced carefully, rifle ready. Rafe lay on his back, both hands pressed to his stomach, blood seeping between his fingers. The bullet had punched through the trough and torn low into his gut. It was the kind of wound that didn't kill quick. The kind that took hours, unless a doctor was close. Caleb's nearest neighbor was 15 miles away. Rafe's face had gone gray, his breath shallow and ragged. He looked up at Caleb with hate burning in his eyes. "Finish it," he gasped. "Don't leave me like this." Caleb stood over him, rifle lowered now. "You killed 3 men for $1,200, he said. "You rode onto my land ready to murder. You threatened to gut me, and now you're begging." "Please," Rafe whispered. "It hurts. God, it hurts." Caleb said nothing. After a long moment, he turned away and walked back to the boy still lying face down in the dirt. "Get up." The boy scrambled to his feet, face streaked with dust and tears. "Are you going to kill me?" "That depends," Caleb Ward said. "What's your name?" "William Carter. Folks call me Billy." "How old are you?" 19, 20 next month." Caleb nodded once. "Your friend over there is dying. Gut shot." He glanced toward Rafe Calder, writhing in the dirt. "Could take hours, maybe a full day. It's a hard way to go." Caleb's eyes returned to the boy. "I'm going to give you a choice. You can ride out of here right now, and I'll never speak your name again. As far as the law's concerned, you died here with the rest. Or you can stay and help me bury these men. And after that," Caleb added, "I'll teach you something useful so you don't end up like them." Eli Boone looked around, the bodies scattered across the yard, the blood soaking into the Arizona dirt, the broken fence. "Useful how?" he asked hoarsely. "How to live without a gun, how to work an honest day, how not to end up as a corpse waiting on the ground." Caleb gestured toward the torn wire fence. "I need help fixing what you boys cut. Need help with a lot of things around here. Room, board, small wage. You stay sober. Stay clean. Learn to work," he continued. "You might make something of yourself." Eli stared at him, fear and confusion fighting with desperation. "Why would you do that, after what we did?" "Because I was 19 once," Caleb said quietly. "Made bad choices. Rode with bad men. Someone gave me a chance to walk away. I took it. Spent the next 30 years trying to balance the damage I'd done. Maybe you deserve the same chance." Rafe's voice cut in, thin and bitter. "Don't listen to him, Eli. He's playing you. He'll shoot you the moment you turn your back." Caleb didn't look his way. "Your friend's dying," he said calmly, "and he's still trying to drag you down. That tell you anything about the kind of man he is?" Eli stood silent, wrestling with himself. Then he nodded once. "I'll stay. I'll help. Just don't let him suffer like that. It ain't right. Even for him." Caleb walked back to Rafe. The outlaw leader's skin had gone gray, his breathing wet and broken. "You heard the boy?" Caleb said. He's asking mercy for you. Go to hell, Rafe whispered. Already been there, Caleb replied. Spent most of my life in it. He raised the rifle and fired once. The shot rolled through the canyon, then faded, leaving only wind and the distant cry of a hawk. Eli flinched, but didn't turn away. Caleb noticed. A man who couldn't face consequences never learned from them. Go catch the horses, he said, the ones that didn't run far. We'll need them to drag the bodies. Where to? Eli asked. Caleb pointed to a rise a quarter-mile north. Up there, good view of the canyon. Wind keeps the smell down. I've put 6 men there since I moved in, he added. Didn't want to. They didn't leave me a choice. Eli's eyes widened. 6? In 5 months? Word travels fast among outlaws, Caleb said. Remote ranch. Old man living alone. Means easy money, they think. He began reloading his Winchester, movements smooth and automatic. Habit never really leaves. They worked through the morning, grim, silent labor. Eli caught 3 horses, including his own. They used them to drag the bodies uphill, then spent hours digging graves in hard, rocky ground. Caleb worked beside Eli, despite the stiffness in his hands. He followed one rule his whole life. If you killed a man, you buried him yourself. By early afternoon, 4 graves stood ready. Caleb planted rough wooden crosses and burned names into them with a hot iron. Rafe Calder, Luke Calder. The other 2 were marked only as unknown outlaws with the date. Eli told him their names had been Mason Pike and Harlan Voss, but he didn't know their surnames. A lot of men out here shed names hoping to outrun the past. The past caught them anyway. When it was finished, Caleb removed his hat and stood over the graves. Lord, these men made bad choices and died for them, he said. I don't know if they were loved. I don't know if they ever did right by anyone. But they were human, he continued, and they deserve words spoken over them. Judge them as you see fit. Amen. Amen. Eli echoed softly. They walked back to the ranch in silence. Caleb set coffee to boil and motioned toward the small wooden table. You hungry? Eli nodded. Starving. Caleb Ward laid out salt pork, beans, and hardtack on the table. He worked in silence, slicing and setting things to cook, while Eli Boone stood nearby, unsure where to put his hands or his eyes. After a moment, Caleb spoke without turning around. Tell me how you ended up riding with Rafe Calder. Eli didn't answer right away. Then the words came, slow at first, then faster once they broke loose. He'd grown up in Missouri, lost both parents to influenza at 16, drifted west chasing work that never lasted. 6 months ago, he met Rafe in a Tucson saloon. Rafe bought the drinks, Eli said quietly. Told stories about easy money, made it sound like freedom instead of crime. The first job, he explained, was simple. Holding horses. They went inside a store and came back with cash. I told myself I wasn't really part of it. I was just watching the horses, Eli admitted. But I knew. I knew what they were doing, and I stayed. Caleb set a plate in front of him. When did that change? When did you stop being the horse holder and start being the gun? Third job, Eli said. A bank in Tombstone. Rafe said he needed one more man inside. Said the others were too well known. Told me all I had to do was stand there and look dangerous. Eli stared down at the food. Then the clerk tried to run, and Rafe shot him. Just like that, no hesitation. They ran. And that's when I knew, Eli said. I wasn't pretending anymore. I was part of it, part of killing. The clerk lived, Caleb asked. Yeah. Heard later he pulled through. But that don't change what I did. Caleb sat across from him with his own plate. No, it doesn't. But you understand it, he continued. Most men would make excuses, blame everyone else. You're owning it. That matters. They ate in silence. The food was plain, but filling. Eli ate like someone who hadn't seen a real meal in weeks. When he finished, Caleb poured more coffee and leaned back. Here's how this works. You stay here. You work, sun up to sundown, every day. I'll teach you ranching, Caleb said. It's harder than it looks. You'll mend fence, tend stock, fix tools, keep things standing. You'll earn your keep. Eli hesitated. What about the law? The law thinks you died with Rafe Calder, Caleb replied. As far as anyone's concerned, Eli Boone is buried up on that rise with 4 other outlaws. You'll need to live like a different man. Eli thought on that. What name do I use? That's already decided, Caleb said evenly. Live up to it. Choose to make it mean something. Caleb stood and looked out across his land. The man you were is gone. What matters now is the man you decide to become. In the weeks that followed, Caleb showed him exactly what that meant. They rose before daylight and worked until dark, repairing fences, caring for the small cattle herd, keeping buildings and tools alive. The labor was hard, honest, and unforgiving. Eli took to it faster than Caleb expected. But the nights were different. More than once, Caleb heard Eli cry out in his sleep, reliving the stage robbery that had started it all. The guard, Walter Finch, begging for his life. The gunshot, the smell of blood and powder. Caleb understood. He carried his own ghosts. One night, 3 weeks after the shooting, Caleb found Eli sitting on the porch in the dark, staring into nothing. His face was wet. Can't sleep, Eli said. I keep seeing that guard's face, keep hearing him beg. Caleb lowered himself beside him, joints aching. Those dreams don't leave? I've had them for 30 years, he continued. Every man I ever killed, justified or not, comes back at night. That's the price. Eli swallowed. How do you live with it? By knowing guilt means you're still human, Caleb said. The dangerous ones are the men who sleep easy, the ones who don't think twice. I'd wager Rafe Calder slept fine. But you don't. That's why you've got a chance. Eli wiped his face. I don't feel like I deserve one. Probably don't, Caleb replied. Most of us don't. But you've got it anyway. And what you do with it, that's what counts. But you've got a chance anyway, Caleb Ward said. What you do with it is what matters. You can waste it drowning in regret, or you can build something decent out of what's left of your life. They sat without speaking, listening to the desert breathe. Coyotes called far off in the dark. An owl swept low on the hunt. Wind slid through the canyon walls like a slow warning. At last, Eli Boone broke the silence. Thank you for not killing me. Thank me by being worth saving, Caleb replied. 2 months after the shooting, a stranger rode in. Caleb was repairing shingles on the barn roof when he spotted a thin ribbon of dust rising from the south. One rider, unhurried. He climbed down carefully, rifle already in his hands out of habit, and waited. Eli stepped from the stable, read Caleb's posture, and moved to retrieve his weapon. Caleb shook his head. Stay unarmed. If trouble comes, it's mine. The rider approached slowly, hands empty and visible. As he drew closer, Caleb noticed the badge pinned to his vest. A territorial marshal. Caleb rested his rifle against the porch rail and walked forward, relaxed but alert. "Marshal, what brings you this far out?" The man was lean, weathered, in his 40s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Name's Marshal Owen Black." "I'm looking into the disappearance of the Calder gang," Black continued. "Their trail led this way. You seen anything out of the ordinary these past couple months?" Caleb motioned toward the porch. "Coffee's hot. Sit a spell." They settled into the shade while Eli brought out cups and the pot. Marshal Black studied the young man closely, then turned back to Caleb. "You're Caleb Ward," he said. "Used to be a bounty hunter out of New Mexico. Retired about 5 years ago." "That's right," Caleb replied. "Bought this place to leave that life behind." "Seems it followed you anyway." Black unfolded a paper from his coat. A wanted poster bearing the sketched faces of Rafe Calder and his crew. "These men robbed a stage near Phoenix," Black said. "Killed 3 people, including a retired guard. Witnesses said they fled east into the canyons. This is the only ranch out here." Caleb sipped his coffee. "They rode through in October, cut my fence, came onto my land. I told them to leave. They chose otherwise." "And what happened?" Black asked. "What had to," Caleb replied. "They're buried on that rise. 5 graves," he added. "You want to see them? I'll walk you up." Black studied Caleb's face for a long moment. "Any of them surrender?" "One tried," Caleb said. "Kid scared out of his wits. I gave him the same choice I gave the rest." "He chose to live." Black's gaze shifted to Eli, standing rigid near the door. "That him?" "That's Eli Boone," Caleb said. "He works for me now." "Eli Boone," Black repeated slowly. "That name isn't on this poster." "Because the man on that paper is dead," Caleb said flatly. "Buried up there with the others. You're welcome to check." "Eli Boone is a ranch hand," Caleb continued. "He's lived clean since the day he stayed." Black set his cup down and stood. "Show me." The 3 of them climbed to the burial ground. Marshal Black examined the wooden crosses, the burned-in names and dates, counting quietly. 5 graves, he said at last. "Just like you said. Rafe Calder, Luke Calder, 2 unknowns. And Eli Boone?" He looked at Eli. "You put your own marker up?" Eli swallowed. "Yes, sir." "Why?" "Because the man I was deserved to be buried," Eli said. "I'm trying to be someone else." Black turned back to Caleb. "You know there's a reward on these men? $1,000 each, 5,000 total." "Don't want it," Caleb replied. "Already got what I came here for." "Quiet." Black studied him, then looked out across the canyon land. "Officially, I found the Calder gang dead, killed during an attempted robbery of a retired lawman. Clear self-defense. The reward money will sit untouched for a year. If no one claims it, it goes to the territorial fund." Then he turned to Eli. "Unofficially, the man who rode as Eli Boone died that day too. What stands here now is a working ranch hand with no criminal record. I'd suggest you keep it that way." Eli let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Yes, sir, I will." After the marshal rode off, Caleb and Eli stood on the rise, looking down at the ranch below. "Why'd you let me go?" Eli asked. He knew who I was. "Because Marshal Black's a smart man," Caleb said. "He knows the difference between justice and revenge." "You're no danger to anyone now," he added. "Locking you up or hanging you wouldn't bring the dead back. But letting you live right," Caleb said quietly, "might count for something." but letting you live an honest life, Caleb Ward said. That's something good pulled out of a bad ending. Winter settled over the canyon country soon after. Nights turned sharp and bitter, and snow came in light, sudden bursts. Caleb showed Eli Boone how to prepare for it, how to shelter the animals, keep them fed and healthy, and protect tools and machinery from freezing damage. They worked shoulder to shoulder through the cold months, and something stronger than familiarity took root between them. It wasn't friendship. It was deeper than that. A quiet bond between a man who had been spared and the one who had chosen to spare him. One December evening, they sat near the fire while wind screamed outside the cabin walls. Eli had been practicing his reading from Caleb's small stack of books. He closed the Bible and looked across the flames. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Those other 6 men buried up there," Eli said. "The ones before us. Were they all like Rafe Calder? Just bad men looking for trouble?" Caleb stared into the fire. 5 of them were. Outlaws. Drifters. Men who thought an old man living alone would be easy prey. "And the 6th? Eli asked. "He was different," Caleb said. "How?" "His name was Noah Pierce, 16 years old. Riding with a gang, but not really one of them," Caleb continued. "A kid from a broken home who made the wrong turns early. Sound familiar?" Eli didn't answer. "Noah drew on me," Caleb said quietly. "I had to shoot. But I think about him," he added, "more than most. Sometimes I wonder if I could have talked him down, given him the chance I gave you." Eli considered that. "Why didn't you?" Caleb exhaled slowly. "Because I was tired. And angry. I just buried 3 men that same day. When Noah and the others rode up, I wasn't feeling merciful. I warned them, like always. But I didn't try very hard. When Noah reached for his gun, I fired first. He never hit the ground alive." Caleb looked at Eli. "That's why you're still here." Trying to even the scales a little. "I can't bring Noah back," he said. "But maybe I can keep you from ending up the same way." Eli nodded slowly. "You think that matters? In the long run?" Caleb shrugged. "I don't know. But it has to count for something." He stood and stretched. "Get some sleep. We start early. Fences don't fix themselves." Spring came back to the canyon with green grass and wildflowers. The ranch looked better than it had when Caleb first bought it. Eli proved steady and capable, learning fast and working hard. He filled out, the hollow look leaving his face. He even smiled now and then. Watching that change stirred something Caleb hadn't felt in years. Pride in another man. But peace never held long on the frontier. One April morning, a lone rider approached. Not an outlaw, but a woman on a worn horse. Caleb and Eli watched her come in, curious rather than wary. She looked to be in her 30s, dressed plain, her face set with resolve earned through hard choices. Caleb met her at the property line. "Ma'am," he said, "you look like you've been riding hard. Can we help you?" She swung down carefully. "I'm looking for Caleb Ward." "That's me." "My name is Ellen Pierce," she said. "My son rode through here last year. I've been trying to find out what happened to him." Caleb felt a tightness in his chest. He glanced at Eli, who had gone pale. "Ma'am," Caleb said gently, "why don't you come up to the house? Sit down, get some water." "I don't need water," Ellen said. Her voice was firm despite her exhaustion. "I need to know if my boy is dead." There was no gentle way to answer. "Yes, ma'am," Caleb said. "I'm sorry. He's buried on that rise. I can take you to him, She didn't cry, didn't falter. She simply nodded, as though she had already known and needed the truth spoken aloud. "How did it happen?" she asked. "He rode onto my land with 3 others," Caleb said. "They intended robbery. I warned them. Noah drew on me. I shot him." His voice stayed level. It was quick. He didn't suffer. "Was it necessary?" Ellen asked. "Could you have wounded him? Arrested him?" Caleb met her eyes. "Ma'am, I've asked myself that every day for 6 months. The honest answer is, I don't know. Maybe. But in that moment, with 4 armed men in front of me, I did what 30 years trained me to do. I reacted. I lived. Your son didn't." Ellen Pierce stood silent for a long time. Then she spoke, her voice heavy with grief and acceptance. "Noah's father died when he was 12, Ellen Pierce said. "I tried to raise him right. I truly did. But he fell in with the wrong crowd. He started drinking, stealing. By 15, he ran off. I hadn't seen him in over a year when I heard he'd been killed here in Arizona territory." "I'm sorry," Caleb Ward said quietly, and meant it. "For what it's worth, I've regretted killing your son more than most of the men I've put down." "Most?" she asked sharply, turning on him. "How many men have you killed, Mr. Ward?" "Too many to sleep easy at night," Caleb answered. Ellen looked away, out across the canyon and the endless sky. "Can I see his grave?" They walked up together, the 3 of them. Ellen stood over the wooden cross bearing Noah Pierce's name. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then the tears came, silent at first, then breaking loose. Caleb and Eli Boone stepped back, giving her space. When she finally turned to them, her voice was steady again. "Thank you for burying him proper, for marking his grave. Some men wouldn't have bothered." "Every man deserves that," Caleb replied. Ellen looked at Eli then, really seeing him for the first time. "How old are you, son?" 20, ma'am." "You rode with men like them?" she asked. Eli hesitated, then nodded. "I did. Not anymore. Caleb gave me a chance to change." Understanding settled into her eyes. "He gave you the chance he didn't give my Noah." "Yes, ma'am." She studied Eli for a long moment, then spoke firmly. "Don't waste it. Don't you dare waste the chance my son never got. You live a good life, you hear me? You make something decent of yourself." "I will," Eli said. "I promise." She turned back to Caleb. "I don't forgive you for killing my boy. I can't. But I understand you did what you thought you had to do," she continued. "And I'm grateful you're trying to make something right by helping this young man. That's something at least." "It isn't enough," Caleb said softly. "No," Ellen agreed. "But it's something." Ellen Pierce stayed the night, accepting their shelter despite the pain it carried. At dawn, Caleb gave her money for the journey back to Missouri and packed her saddlebags with supplies. She accepted without pride or protest, knowing it was both necessary and deserved. Before she left, she placed a small photograph on Noah's grave, weighted down with a stone. A smiling boy of about 10 stared back from the image. "That's who he was," she said. "Before everything went wrong. That's how I want to remember him." After she rode away, Caleb and Eli stood on the rise in silence. "Do you think she'll be all right?" Eli asked. "No," Caleb answered honestly. "There's no such thing after losing a child. But she'll survive. She's strong. She'll carry that grief the rest of her life. But she'll carry it." Because of me. She knows what happened to her son, Eli said. Because you didn't kill me. That may be part of why you're still here, Caleb replied. World works in strange ways. They walked back down to the ranch. The work went on, as it always did. Fences to mend, stock to tend, tools to repair. The honest labor of keeping something alive. Eli threw himself into it with renewed purpose, as if Ellen Pierce's words had lit a fire inside him. Years passed. Eli Boone eventually bought a small ranch 20 miles south. He married a schoolteacher from Prescott and raised 3 children who never knew the names Billy Carter or Rafe Calder. He visited Caleb often, helping the old man as time finally caught up with him. Caleb Ward died in his bed at 73, surrounded by the closest thing to family he'd known in decades. Eli, his wife, and their children buried him up on the rise. The headstone read simply, Caleb Ward tried to do better. It wasn't much, but it was true. The ranch still stands today under different ownership. The wooden crosses on the hill have weathered and fallen, but the graves remain, a reminder that in the Old West, second chances were rare and costly, and that the line between justice and mercy was often written in blood, measured by the choices made when no one was watching. If you were moved by this story of redemption and second chances on the American frontier, don't let it end here. Subscribe to Red Frontier and ring the notification bell so you never miss another tale from the West. We bring you authentic frontier stories every week. Stories of honor, consequence, and the hard choices that shaped the American West. Leave a comment below. Would you have given Eli Boone the same chance? Have you ever stood between justice and mercy? And what did you choose? What did Ellen Pierce's visit mean to you? If this story stayed with you, share it with friends and family who value classic westerns with real emotional weight. Help us grow a circle of listeners who believe good storytelling still matters, where actions carry consequences, and every decision leaves a mark. Because the Old West wasn't just about quick hands and faster guns. It was about tough men facing harder choices on unforgiving land, searching for redemption where mercy was scarce and second chances were rare. It was about knowing that the boundary between justice and mercy is often written in blood and measured by the choices we make when no one else is there to see them. Until next time, this is Red Frontier. Keep your conscience steady, your heart open to redemption, and your stories close. We'll meet again on the next trail. Ride safe, partners. And remember, no matter how far you've gone, it's never too late to become the person you were meant to be. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for listening. If this story has touched your heart, I invite you to stay with us to discover more true tales of the Wild West. Stories that honor resilience, tenderness, and the spirit that God placed in those who blaze the trail. Subscribe, share, leave your thoughts in the comments, and join us once again to journey across this untamed land. Thank you. Aviso legal. Disclaimer. These stories are crafted purely for entertainment and may contain imaginative additions or dramatic interpretations inspired by old frontier eras. We use AI-based resources, voice, imagery, and drafting as part of our creative process. But every final detail is carefully reviewed and shaped by human effort to preserve emotional depth and authenticity. We strictly follow YouTube's rules regarding AI-generated content and refrain from deepfakes, altered identities, or misleading representations. All images, sounds, and related materials are lawfully obtained. Please do not reuse, modify, or distribute any portion of this content without written permission. Thank you for valuing creativity, respect, and original work.